All right, there we go. Welcome everyone. Hey, Burrito Bengi. So it's been a while. It's been a few months since I've done a stream like this. I was just, thanks you too. I was just vacuumforming some shells, much like this one with the magnetic lenses. And I've done this type of live stream before, but it's been like a year or so since I've done that, and I've learned a lot since then, and I can do the job a lot better. So, um, uh, without further ado, hey CAK Comedy, it's good to see you guys. It's been a long time. I'm also going to be doing some more streams in the future, just to kind of mention that, and I'll go over that a little bit more. But I have some plans for what I'm going to do with like my Saiyan armor and a few other things. I know I always talk about that stuff, and sometimes it falls through, but sometimes it happens, so I try. Without further ado, though, we're going to go through vacuforming again here. And really fast, I vacuform my shells out of ABS plastic. It's 1/8 inch thick, so it's this, about that thick plastic, and it makes for a pretty solid, stiff face shell that doesn't deform, it doesn't, really lose its shape when you're wearing it under a fabric mask. Um, okay, so 1/8 inch thick ABS plastic, and I actually, a lot of people who vacuform will tell you you usually vacuform on an actual full square sheet of plastic, but I have always done this custom thinner sheet because it works for the face shells and it fits all the way into my oven. And I use my custom frame for that, which is just made out of Home Depot rulers. You can see right there about how thick it is. It's kind of like Lincoln Logs, and that's so that it totally surrounds the plastic on the top and the bottom, and it makes that vacuum seal. So it's important that you have that when you make your frame for your plastic. It has to totally suction down on it. And I'll show you my vacuum box too. Switch camera. I didn't realize that when I muted it. So I'm back. Sorry. Thanks for letting me know. I always do that. When I take that camera view away, it takes my voice away. So that's good to know. Um, uh, yeah, okay, so I'm just switching that around so that won't happen again. Um, there we go. I think that'll help. So now when I switch back and forth, it won't lose audio. So, oh, I'm actually getting, sorry guys, I always have these little problems. Okay, so back to what I was talking about. Um, so you can see on my vacuum table, I've got that weather stripping that goes all along the edge. That completes the suction when the frame goes down on the table. And then, so sorry, my voice cut out. And so the table itself is just a box. And you have to make sure that when you build your vacuum table box that you use some kind of like sealant to make sure that the air can't escape anywhere but through those holes. Because you need a perfect vacuum to pull the plastic down on your buck. And then you'll see over here that the vacuum is plugged into the side like that. And I'm going to try and show you. I actually have some foam in there. You might be able to see that foam. And that seals the vacuum hose even more when I plug that in. Really nice and tight. And then I use a really simple vacuum. It's called the Bucket Head from Home Depot. It's just a tiny little vacuum, and it works fine. It doesn't need to be too much horsepower. I've used that vacuum for probably 100, 200 face shells, so it really works. I can attest to that. Okay, so to prepare, oh, Sebi just mentioned that he made a tutorial on making the Vacuform table. So if you want to see a little bit more on that, you can check his out. It's cool. I noticed a little while ago that now your comments are showing up in the stream, the recording of the stream. So it's nice that that was actually recorded and is kept there. So you can check on Sebi's channel if you want to see his tutorial for creating a Vacuform table. You can basically just see mine's just a basic box, and then I built a rolling cart underneath with wood, and it has a few shelves for the face shelf bucks that I use underneath. So moving forward, to prepare the plastic, it's got to be pretty clean. It's got to be wiped down. It gets kind of dirty when you're cutting it into the right size, but I put it onto my frame, and I use these wing nuts and bolts that you saw earlier. You can see the bolts right there, and then you just take a wing nut and put it on there. It's really easy to get that on there. So I put that on all those. So what kind of projects is everybody working on? I haven't talked to you guys in way too long. I'm excited to do some more streams. I have some cool plans for how I'm going to kind of change up the look of my page and make it look a little bit more professional. Oh yeah, DragonCon just got finished. Does anyone go to DragonCon? Oh, time to I drill a hole here. Let me address this really quick. So I actually drill a hole through the frame and through the plastic, and that actually secures the plastic, because if you don't do that, it pulls so much that it'll pull the plastic out from under the frame. And sometimes it even does that anyway if you don't heat it up enough. Oh, Emo, you're working on a Venom mask? I have an idea for a Venom mask that I really want to do, kind of along the lines of the type of stuff that I do. So I'm actually really excited to kind of pursue that. So we'll see how that turns out. All right. So you have to make sure that your frame and sheet are pretty clean here. Oh, that's cool. Indiana Jones hats. That's what CAK Comedy is working on. Are you working with real leather with those, or are you using some kind of a vinyl, which is a little bit easier and cheaper to get? Sometimes vinyl can look pretty good and like leather. Never quite the same, obviously. Okay, so the plastic frame and or the plastic and the frame here are finished and about prepared, and the next step is the oven. So before, I can't remember what the last video I said the temperature should be, but now I recommend the temperature should be between 425 Fahrenheit and 450 Fahrenheit. I'm doing 430 right now. It really depends on where you're getting your plastic from and a little bit of experimenting. And it takes about 5 minutes at about that temperature for the plastic to droop down. So the plastic's going to go from this flat shape here, and it's going to droop down about 2 or 3 inches here, and then we're going to take it out of the oven and then put it onto the face shell buck, and then it will push up over the face shell over here when we just go straight down on top of it. A quick comment on the oven safety, because I get a lot of people that tell me that they're not allowed to do this because their loved ones tell them that they're not allowed to use the oven to do this. And you have to respect that if people don't want to do that. But what I will say is I've done some research and thought about like what the dangers of plastic and heat and the fumes and the chemicals are. And putting plastic into the oven like this, the fumes aren't going to like stick to the inside of the oven and then come back into your food. The real danger is just the fumes themselves when you're heating the plastic. So you always want ventilation, a fan, and open, like my door is open and my garage door is open, or no, it's not, but my garage door should be open. There we go. And so that's producing good airflow. That's not keeping the fumes from the heating plastic from filling my kitchen here. And so I really don't think there's any kind of hazard to cooking food after you've put plastic in the oven. It's just heating the plastic up. And then also, once I'm done vacuforming, I open the oven door and I let it air out once it's turned off, so that any fumes or anything just kind of air out and also are ventilated out. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and put my plastic into the oven. And another thing about my frame here, you'll notice, is I've got these wire, they're about 20 gauge wire, just bent arms. They're sort of like little wings. And I measured very specifically so that these little metal wings go right onto the shelf in my oven. And that supports it, and it kind of keeps the whole frame from touching any edge of the oven and burning it at any point. So what I'm going to do now is go ahead and get this into my oven. There we go. Okay. So hopefully that's not too bumpy, but go ahead and open that. Get it in there. So you can see it's not all the way at the top of the oven, and it's not in the middle either. It's sort of, you know, 2/3 the way up in the oven. And it's sitting there about as central in the oven as you can. And also, if you have a convection oven, that's the best, because convection means that it's moving the air around and circulating it. And this oven actually does that, but it's broken and the fan rattles really loud, so I can't use it. But that gives you more of a consistent heat, which can be a problem when you're vacuforming. Okay, so that's, another thing, gotta start your timer. I always get distracted. 5 minutes is gonna be enough, because it's gonna take a little longer than 5 minutes here. It usually does. And that's good. You want it to remind you before it's ready. You want to be reminded, like if you go to the bathroom or go and get a drink, you want to be sure that you're not forgetting about it and the plastic. Because if you leave it going longer than the 6 or 7 minutes that it will dip down for, it will actually melt and get into your oven. And that actually leads me to another point. What you can see down here in the oven underneath, I've got a cookie tray with tin foil on it. And that's on the bottom rack. So I have one rack in the oven, and it's at the bottom, and it has to be very centered in the oven or it will misdirect the heat. But what that cookie tray and tin foil are there for is so that just in case the plastic were to melt too far and actually drip down, it would only melt onto that tin foil. And all you'd have to do is pull the plastic out really fast in the cookie sheet as well with gloves or oven mitts, and you wouldn't have to scrape it out of your oven. I know that the hard way. I did that in high school. I accidentally left a piece of plastic in the oven too long and it dripped down onto the bottom of the oven. It wasn't too hard to scrape off once it cooled, but that's probably the worst thing you could do as far as toxic for food. So that's going to be another couple minutes. So I noticed you guys are still talking here in the comments. Oh, I noticed Brandon's making a Keyblade. That's cool. I played Kingdom Hearts when that first came out, whatever, like 20 years ago. I'm old. I was a kid when that came out. I loved the Keyblades. That was kind of one of my early prop projects, making the Keyblades, because those were always a really cool prop. Still are. Oh, Sebi talked about his buck. He said that he had a clay buck and it broke. So I haven't really talked about the buck, but that's a good thing to talk about here. The buck that I use, So you can see it looks like plastic, and it is. So what I did was I slushed plastic around in a silicone mold of the actual face shell that I made, and I sanded and made really smooth. So I got that done, and then inside I slushed plaster of Paris. And when you fill something like a face shell, like this, with plaster of Paris, you have to do thin layers at a time. You have to wait until the plaster is just cured enough to kind of have a pasty consistency, and then do thin layers inside at a time. Because if you just fill the entire thing up at once, it has a tendency to make the shape bow out because the shell's not quite strong enough to withhold that much water pressure. And so it'll make the shell kind of bow out like a water balloon. So you want to do really thin layers. But that will usually... Okay, so the plastic's starting to heat up here. You can see it's starting to bend. So you can see my oven's heat isn't very consistent. You see those kind of like lines and dips? That's not very ideal. And I don't know why my oven's doing that, because it didn't used to do that, but it does it now. I need some more light under there, but you can see that it's starting to dip. So I'm going to move the camera. Well, move it here for now. I've got another minute. Alright. Okay. So, you always want to wear gloves. I'm putting my gloves on right now because the timer is about to go off in about 30 seconds. I'm going to stop it actually because it's about ready to go. It might be a little too... Well, that's actually pretty perfect. You can barely see it in there. It's a little dark, but you can see it's bowing down about 2 or 3 inches. So I'm going to go ahead and put my camera back up on the tripod here for the fun part. And I'm going to go ahead and mute it too, so we'll be back. Okay, thankfully I remembered to bring the audio back. So that's always fun. That's why I wanted to do the stream today. Do some more of that. So now that I've got that formed over here, and in case you didn't know, there's magnets in these lenses, and that's what allowed it to stick to the buck while it was forming. So I'm going to put my gloves back on because it's hot. It's about 450 degrees. And I like these Home Depot. They're like a latex dipped glove. It gives you a lot of friction grip on your work. So I lift it up, and usually my shells sit on top of a base that can just be pulled out. So this is what the shell sits on top of. And now that's been pulled out, all that's left inside is the shell inside of that plastic in there, as you can see. So all I have to do, take off the wing nuts. Oh yeah, I better plug my merch here. Go to my Etsy store if you want. You can just go to Etsy and search Made by McLean shop, and that's where you can get things like this. I know my prices are a little high for some, but I try to make it affordable by selling things like just the shell alone or just the lenses alone. And I'm actually going to start doing more kits and things. Like I think I'll do lens kits and more shell kits and things like that, so that it's a little more affordable for everybody. Because my prices are very much based on the time and effort and materials and expenses that go into everything. So that's kind of how that all goes. Okay, so back to the face shell. I've got it out of the frame. Brandon asked where I get the mesh on the lenses. I make my own mesh, actually. It's vinyl, and I cut it myself. Okay, so just trimming out the shell here. That's the next step. What I use for trimming a shell is a pair of airline snips. Yes, not all the way gone. I use a pair of airline snips. These ones are the, I think the right way, the right facing which ways. They work, they're just my favorite pair. They just cut the direction I like most of the time. And then I use a box cutter here. You got to be careful with knives. The #1 rule with knives is you're never cutting towards yourself, as I swish it around. So what I mean by you're never cutting towards yourself is, say I'm cutting a line like this across the side, like this. I wouldn't want to have my hand in the way. Do you see how my fingers are in the way? So if I lose control, I cut over my fingers. So the key is you're never cutting towards yourself. You always keep in mind that if you were to lose control and lose the knife, you're just never able to hurt yourself because of that. So with these face shells, you kind of have to take into account that sometimes you're cutting under the arm. Like you can cut under the arm and away from yourself as long as your hand is really out of the way. But that's the key to cutting that I want to emphasize in case anyone is new to knives, because you can really hurt yourself with a knife when you're doing anything that requires some exertion. Okay, and so I don't trim the shell all the way down here. In my last video, I was trimming the shells like all the way down here, and it made it really hard to get the buck out of the shell, and it also, the shell doesn't look very good when it goes that far back. So I know pretty much exactly how far up I like to have it, and I have a little drilled indentation. It's kind of difficult to see. I'm trying to you can kind of see it there in the middle of that light right there. But that tells me where the center of the face shell is, and then also a little bit above where I'm going to cut my edge. And so I take a piece of duct tape, it's just a strip of duct tape like this, and start below the hole. And I'm doing this towards you so you can kind of see it, but I don't just go completely flat, like parallel to the surface, because if you look at the side, I've kind of gone too far up onto the shell. So the line should line up down here where the chin is. I like it so that when the shell is resting flat on a surface, this edge is flat and the chin is flat too, so that it totally sits flat on the surface. Okay, that's pretty close. It's hard to do it perfectly. And I've done it so that this indentation was on the shell already, but it's hard to see it through the vacuforming, so I always just like to do it this way. Okay, so that's pretty good. And then once I do the duct tape part, I put my gloves back on. It just gives me more grip, and then if worst case scenario I was to cut my hand, it would have to be really hard to go through the glove. Hot in my workshop right now. That's what an oven will do to you. Okay, so the first thing I do is I go along that duct tape, that piece of duct tape thinner. Oh, yeah, I forgot to update the graphic. Thanks for letting me know. Darn it. Always forget something. Where's the 18s? 2018. There it is. Does that look better? Thank you for pointing that out, Ethan. Although, I mean, I wish I could go back, but Now it's right. Hopefully the title is right. Yeah, it is. Although the date is wrong. The date is all European. Okay, so sorry to Europeans and everyone else in the world. No, CAK, not getting rusty. If you haven't noticed, every time I do a stream, I do that. There's something like that I mess up. It's kind of like one of the reasons why I've never been super consistent with it. Is every time I do these streams, I always mess a couple things up. But I'm getting better at it, so it's fun. It's fun to be here and do this stuff with you guys. So I've put the duct tape on here, and so the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to take my knife, nice sharp blade, and I'm just going to do a light score along that duct tape so that I can then take it off and not mess it up. Always moving it so that I'm not cutting towards myself. Because again, if I were to lose control here, it would go away from me. It wouldn't. There's very little chance that it would actually come into me. There's very little chance that you'd lose control, but I never cut myself. I never injure myself if I follow that rule closely. Hi, Origami Lego Dragon. Thanks for tuning in. Thanks all of you guys for tuning in. It's nice to be out here in front of you guys again. Okay, so on my buck, it's pretty easy to see the edge. I make sure that it's really nice and defined, and I've got about ½ an inch that I can trim away from the shell so I can trim it closer later on. So I go along, cutting that out, and it's pretty easy. Oh, I also cut now a middle slit that I'll use to free it in a little bit. So I go along. And remember, you score. You're going through a couple times, not going super hard, but going through a couple times. I remember Prototype, the game. Origami Lego Dragon asked about that, I think. I don't think I ever played it, though. It looked cool. Oops. Well, I just snapped my blade. This is probably a good thing to be wearing safety glasses for, because in a worst case scenario, you might have just seen me get a piece of metal shrapnel up in my eye. Really is always just a better safe than sorry. You know, I should just be wearing safety glasses all the time up here as a good example. Okay, so, well, now that you have the duct tape off, you have to go back over this back edge. All right, so that slit I cut here in the middle, I'm going to use my snips, go through the side up to that. Press it open. Boom. A little easier than the last video. And now you have some scrap plastic that I hope can be recycled. I don't know if ABS is recyclable or not, but I hope that they're recycling it, not just tossing it out. And you're left with your face shell here. And then it's pretty easy to just hop back into the next one. Put your butt back. There we go. Start again with the frame. Origami Lego Dragon asked if I've been to Comic-Con, and unfortunately, no. I'm really bad about getting out and getting to conventions. I don't really have like a big like group of friends. I've never really, you know, gotten out enough and gotten to know everybody to have a group of friends where, you know, you can get a hotel room and all those things, because that's kind of necessary for going to those. But I would love to go to Comic-Con. I'm thinking about the possibility of, you know, someday in the future being able to travel around a little bit and go to different conventions around, maybe bring a booth worth of my work and display different things, and that'd probably be after the stream was a little more consistent, because I have some cool plans for cleaning it up a little bit and not having it be in my kitchen like this. I'm going to get a nice microphone, I'm going to get a nice camera, not have it be so rough around the edges, I guess, is what I'll say. Jonathan asked what the frames are made out of on the lenses, and it's a urethane plastic from Smooth On, which is a plastic company that has a few retail places across the country, like 12 places in 12 cities, and you can go to Smooth On and get urethane plastics, where basically you mix part A and part B, and it's a liquid, and when you put it into a silicone mold, it hardens in a few hours, and then you can take it out and then clean them up and use them like that. And that's a pretty normal way of how to make them. Hi, Duck Production. Looks like you need some attention, so I'll give you a shout out. There's some validation. You exist, Duck. You exist. You're there. Burrito asked just now, timer, remember, always timer. I get distracted when I do these streams. 5 minutes until we're going here again. Burrito just asked if I've got a dream cosplay that I want to do. And I've actually got one in mind right now that I'm pretty excited about the idea of it. And I'm not going to go too much into details, because sometimes people kind of poach my streams a little bit, I think, for new ideas or something. I don't know. I see my stuff float away a little bit, but this project is still way out there. But basically along the lines of like a giant, a larger size costume. Like there are some of those out there that you've probably seen of, like Thanos and like the one Stan Winston did, and those. And that's something I'm really interested in. Like a lot of my skill sets here with 3D design and printing and vacuforming, I think I could really pull something like that off. And it's going to give me a good excuse to get into Arduino a little bit more, which is how you program LEDs and moving servos and stepper motors and things like that, and like sound effects. Yeah, that's something that, thanks for asking about my dream project. It's fun to talk about that stuff. But I'm actually going to do some experiments on that pretty soon. This is something that I want to get going pretty quickly. I don't want to do it before the Saiyan armor is done, but I need to get some experiments done to make sure some of the parts are possible before I get my hopes too up about what it will be. Because it'd be pretty cool if it works out. So I'm pretty excited for it. Kind of the ultimate cosplay if it works out, without going too much more into it. I'm also, right now, I'm thinking, some of you might remember my invisible mask that I posted on social media about a year ago. It was about a year ago now that I posted the pictures of that, because that was how long ago I worked on it since then, because I'm kind of at a crucial step where it's kind of a risk to move forward without ruining what I've done so far. But anyway, the reason I bring that up is because my idea is I think I might actually adapt that into something a little more Predator related, and kind of along the lines of maybe a figurine, like maybe about this tall, but adapt my glowing technology to a Predator figurine, so that rather than just a kind of a blank mask, because it would take me a long time to get a full suit going, but rather than just like a blank mask, actually show how this technology works on something as intricately shaped as a Predator statue, and actually see the Predator turn invisible. Like, I think that will be a really cool way to showcase that. So I actually have that 3D model already working, and I'm going to get that 3D printed, and I'm actually just kind of excited to make a model like this tall and like kind of go into it and get it really detailed. So that's one of my many side projects that I like to think of while I'm getting face shells done. It's just kind of exciting, and I usually get that stuff done late at night. It's hard when you do something that you love. Like these space shells you know, the reason I got into facial stuff like this is because I love it and I love making things. But when you do it like to make a bunch of them, like I'm doing right now, it kind of gets to weigh you down and it kind of saps your creative energy. So it's important if you're ever in that position, you've got to kind of budget your time and do the thing that was originally enjoyable and important to you, and not just all work if you're doing something that you used to love. And that goes for a lot of professions. So you gotta be able to control that, because once your passion becomes your job, sometimes you can realize you don't have your passion anymore, and your job is kind of stressful, and so you you flounder like I've done in the past. Origami Lego Dragon asked, who's the better Joker, Jack Nicholson or Heath Ledger? I like Heath Ledger, but obviously I think Jack Nicholson did the comic book one like perfectly. I don't even want to talk about the Jared Leto one, but that's just what DC does these days. But Heath Ledger one was just so perfect for the Christopher Nolan, because the Christopher Nolan Batman was just such a specific comic book movie in the way it was able to conform to reality. And a ton of other comic book movies tried to do that, but only that Batman trilogy could really do that, could fit in the real world as well as that one did. And that Joker really fit. His Heath Ledger Joker really fit, I thought, as his insane, just psycho. And I mean, you're kind of like already dealing with that in the real world. Okay, so the timer was just about to go off. Plastic's starting to droop, so I'm going to switch cameras. I think Joaquin Phoenix is super talented. Whatever he does is great, really. I mean, he's just fantastic in whatever he does. Okay, switching cameras. Okay, there we go. Another one. Yeah, I turned the audio off just because the vacuum, I think, might be a little loud. I don't know. Maybe it's not that bad, but I figure it might be a little loud, so I turned it off for that. Oh, sorry, I don't mean to ignore about the homecoming. Yeah, I know you guys are super excited about that. I just kind of lost excitement about it because, I mean, honestly, when I started working on it, I kind of hit a few roadblocks with it, and then the other guys, they just kind of took off with theirs, and they kind of, the same thing that kind of happens with me on projects over and over and over is I can't get it done fast enough or reliably enough, and then some other group takes it and goes, and the same thing with the Saiyan armor. Someone else finished their movie version of the Saiyan armor already, and it's just like, it's like I have to just keep projects quiet, I get. But anyway, about the MCU mask, I want to get into that and actually, just do a tutorial on it at this point. I don't think I'm ever gonna do any sales on it, to be honest. I don't want to crush anyone's feelings, but the problem is it's so much work and it's so precise. Like it's like a piano inside of that mask, and so, and then you have to be able to devote an entire mask to it, and you have to glue the frames on to the mask. So it's a complicated thing. And so I'm thinking what I'm going to do for the MCU is a lot for like my PlayStation 4 Insomniac lenses. If you've seen my Instagram, the PlayStation 4 lenses that I have an insert that go inside of the lens, and then that gives it the expression. I don't have a pair on hand. I wish I did. All the pairs that I've made so far have gone out into the mail right away. what I'm thinking for the MCU is that I'll just do an MCU shell because it kind of completes the collection for me up to this point, and then I can kind of go forward working on maybe the new shells that are going to be in the Spider-Verse movie that's coming out in December. Maybe make an actual PS4 shell for people that want that, but that's complicated. I think that this one looks great. You know, so many people see the picture of it and they go like, man, I thought that was from the game. So I really don't see a reason to go forward with it. Like if other people have a shell that's like, oh, this much more accurate, that's good. You can get it, but I have a feeling that maybe they're not as experienced making face shells, and they might not do. But I don't know. Maybe they are. So that's how economics work, buying and selling. So if you wanted to get a shell from someone else, you can. But I'm pretty happy, and I also like the fact that it can switch between the PS4 and the ASM2 really easily, and it's not another big expense. Stephen Walt just brought up the Venom mask. I actually already mentioned that in the stream because someone else has mentioned that they are making a Venom mask, and yeah, I've got an idea for a Venom mask, and it would be pretty cool. Again, I can't go too far into it because, like I just said, people, you know, I basically just have to keep projects quiet until I'm done at this point, and I'm sorry for that. Like, it's, you know, I'm trying to do stuff like this, but, you know, as far as, oh, that's a little crooked. As far as, you know, certain details of certain projects, I feel like I just have to kind of keep it secret at this point. Alright, so now that's ready to cut. Cut this really fast. Peel it off. Brandon asked about the 2099 suit. I'll be honest, I just have never been a huge fan of the 2099 suit. Like, it's kind of cool, and I kind of liked it when I was a kid when it first came out in the 90s. Like, I remember I actually got the 2099 comics when they first came out, and they were too kind of like serious and dark and heavy when I was a little kid, and I enjoyed just like the general brighter Spider-Man comics. So my cousin actually traded me for my 2099 comics, but since then I've just never been a huge fan of 2099. And the mask just doesn't like make sense to me, I guess. Just like the shape and the like thing. I don't know. I've just never really liked it that much, I guess. Not as much as other designs. I'd like to do like a Scarlet Spider, one of those ones with big lenses. That'd be kind of cool with the mesh lenses. Certain projects like that. You know, I just need to get into what it is that I'm pretty good at actually manufacturing these shells and working on projects that I'm interested in. What I need to now kind of squeeze into the middle is more innovation, you know, innovating new products like new face shells. But I can do that really fast these days. I can make a new face shell buck in a matter of a week these days. So I really just need to kind of apply myself to that and get a big catalog going. Spider-Man's dead. Sorry, kids. Got dark there. Because I'm watching Predator and thinking about Predator. I kind of want to see the new Predator movie. I just really like Key Michael Peele. I don't remember which one he is, but I love him. Thomas Jane is in it, and it's a I can't remember the director's name, but yeah, I kind of want to see the new Predator movie. And apparently, it's actually supposed to be kind of good and like funny and action movie-like. So, unlike most of the Predator sequels that have come out. All right, that's two face shells done. I need to do four of these. All right. Oh, that's cool, origami Lego dragon. I bet you've never watched an internet thing that talks to you while you play a video game. I bet that's weird. What system are you playing Prototype on? Isn't that an old one? Is that like PS2 or PS3 or Xbox or something? I wish I could play the new Spider-Man game, but I don't have a PS4. I need to buy some lights and cameras and microphones, and I can't justify that huge expense. But it would be awesome. And then Red Dead Redemption 2 is coming out later this fall, and that's going to be an amazing video game. So I have to get a PS4 eventually. That just has to happen. All right, sheet number 3, ready to go. And it goes. All right, here we go. Oh, that's cool. Oh, neat. On PS4, probably download. That's neat. Brandon was talking about Miles Morales and how the TASM2, Amazing Spider-Man 2 shell would probably work really well. But that's one of the ones, the one from coming up, the Into the Spider-Verse movie that's coming out. That's one of the ones I actually want to do with the Miles, because he has those, I think they're red frames and they have a blue stripe that go inside of them, and that looks pretty cool. That'd be kind of a unique challenge. But I should do that one. I'll probably be doing that one at least before the movie comes out. There's probably going to be a bit of a rush before Halloween, I imagine. There was a rush before this last week for Dragon Con, and I think a couple other conventions. It was crazy. Ethan asked if I've ever done CGI for films or if I've just kept doing it for prints. I wanted to, at one point in my life, do CGI, like Pixar and all of that, but the animation industry is not good. I don't want to insult anyone that's there, but it's hard. It's a hard industry. You have to put in a lot of labor. You know, you work in the fields before you can actually work up anywhere, and that's kind of true across the animation industry. But I've just been learning CG, or like 3D design, just in the last 2 years, mainly. Like, I've done it before, but in the last 2 years since I started 3D printing, I really started to learn a lot more, and Blender helped a lot. Blender was really good for learning just like the real basics of vertices and what modifiers to put on, and there are a lot of tutorials for Blender. For like anything you want to model, there's a tutorial that someone is doing something similar, modeling it. And so it's just really easy to, you know, figure out different challenges like that when you're doing modeling like that. Got a few minutes here still left to go. Yeah, Burrito, I haven't seen any other of those Miles frames, but I could see how people would forget that. It's also kind of a difficult detail if you don't know how to do it correctly, and I have some ideas for how I'll do it and be able to mass produce it, because that's always the key. It's one thing to create just one mask, just create one of something, but if it's really difficult to create one of the components, then you're going to have a hard time mass producing it, because you're going to get stopped on that component, always having to be like really difficult to make it. And that's something that can be like that, is a blue stripe in the lenses like that. That's really hard to paint, so it's important to think of ways to make it really easy to paint, which is not difficult, you know, just making, you know, stencils essentially, or something like that. Oh yeah, I'm really excited for Into the Spider-Verse or Into the Spider-Verse. I think that was a brilliant idea for them to do that movie because it allows them, they'd never be able to do a lot of those characters for the MCU for all their movies for like their main story, but they know those characters are so popular, and so they just were smart and they're like, well, let's just do a movie that's CG, forget actors, forget hire a couple of voice talents, just do a movie CG that looks amazing because you can do that so easily these days. A CG movie that basically looks real, but then they can do something cool like the comic style with it, and then you can just do everything like Miles and Gwen whatever her name is, Spider Gwen. That's right, Spider Gwen, or all these different styles. And I bet there's gonna be a ton of different styles, like Spider-Man Noirs in there, with Nicolas Cage. So that's gonna be really funny, actually. I'm excited for that movie. Burrito Bengi asked, "Are you hyped for the Venom movie?" No, because I know better than to get hyped for Sony movies. I feel like I probably shouldn't be saying that on a like an actual out there YouTube stream, or I'm gonna lose revenue or something. But I feel like Sony just can't. They can't handle their properties. It's not gonna be good. It's gonna be a mess. They're gonna force in a bunch of other storylines. It's gonna be like Justice League or any of those other movies. Because they've got a suit problem. Their suits think they're better than they are. Their suits think they're like a creative. Their executives think they're the creative minds, and so they get in there and they're like, oh, let's introduce the Flash here. Let's introduce him. Let's introduce all that. But it's never a good idea. Don't do that. Take your time. Well, hopefully Venom will be good. Okay. All right. Shell number 3 is formed. Looks good. Came out well. So I've gotten, since the last time I did these videos, I've just gotten way better. I don't have nearly as many defective shells as I used to. I'm able to do it a little faster, but as you can see, I have been talking and stuff, but I've only been able to get 3 face shells done in an hour. That's how long I've been streaming about, and so it takes a while. If I have 8 face shells to do in a day, it can take a couple of hours just to form them, and then I've got to trim and clean them all up. So. Dodger, I already kind of plugged that earlier. You can check out my Etsy shop. So go to Etsy.com and go to search for Made by McLean shop, or just search Spider-Man face shells, and mine will be one of the ones that come up. And so you can see that there. So that's another plug for you right there. But yeah, so before this thing cools down, you always want to trim it quick. You don't want to let it cool down too much. The hotter it is, the easier the blade cuts through it like butter. Like butter. Yeah, I really like that PS4 suit. I think the patterns that have been made so far are pretty good, but that's another thing that I'm thinking I might get back into, is maybe jump back and make another, like an MCU pattern and a PS4 pattern. I don't want to get your guys' hopes up, because if I were to do that, if I were to get back into pattern design, I'm basically, like, I would start from the ground up. I'm going to be designing a small, a medium, a large, and like have the fitting, because that's always been my biggest problem when I'm doing pattern work, like making an MCU pattern, or, well, I haven't done MCU, but when I did like ASM1, ASM2, it's just really hard to do a bunch of different patterns that fit a bunch of different body types. But I really want to start from the ground up and get like maybe some good base patterns for each of those different body types, and then be able to offer all those different sizes, because right now it's just too hard to fit, to get, you know, it's too often that I sell a suit to someone, and then a few months later they kind of come crying to me like, it doesn't fit, make it fit. And it's like, I'm sorry, I can't. It's one size fits most. All right, got the tape on there, nice and flat. Oh, thanks, Evil B300. He just said he likes the Vegeta. Yeah, that's ultimately what it's going to be. I think I'm going to ultimately even do the headpiece, but I'm going to try and have my Vegeta suit done at the end of October. But I'm going to be doing some streams in the next 2 months for that, because I'm going to be doing a muscle suit. I'm going to be doing a really cool screen printed bodysuit that Elfet, most of you guys know, he's going to help me out with that. So there's going to be some cool stuff that goes into that. So I'm really excited about that. That's why I'm getting a lot of work done this weekend, because I want to get really caught up on work, get all the orders that I've got coming out. Like I'm going to have like a dozen orders going out on Tuesday when the mail post office opens back up. But yeah, so I'm excited to work on that Vegeta suit again. And that's kind of going to be my top priority once I get caught up, which is what I'm doing. But I figured, hey, why not hang out with you guys while I do it? Real quick, how old are all of you? I mean, if you don't feel comfortable saying, that's fine. But you know, I'm kind of curious what the age range is of people watching, just on like based on what I need to address, like when I'm teaching, maybe what concepts are a little too. Although I'm just going to teach you the stuff that I do, because that's what you guys are here for. You're interested in you don't want to learn about how to use scissors. You want to learn how to put plastic in your oven, which is something no one else will teach you. No one else is nuts enough to teach you. Oh, cool. So that's what I was thinking. Pretty good range. I know some of you guys sometimes are like around 10 or 12. That's good too. That's about how old I was when I started getting into this stuff, about middle school. Actually, I think I've told the story before, but the first thing I did was a Boba Fett costume in middle school. And it was in Colorado, so I went to Starland, or Starfest, in 2002. And it was a really not a good Boba Fett costume, not like you'd expect if I were to make it today, which I kind of think about every now and then. It would be a cool thing to have on a mannequin. So my first basic cosplay project was a Boba Fett costume that I actually tackled. My mom helped me sew together the suit. We just used like a gray Dickies suit. It wasn't the right like fit at all. I just bent plastic in boiling water for the plates and painted them as best as I could. But it's really fun because it was the first time I'd done that. And then we put flashing red LEDs in the chest plate that were meant for like a Christmas sweater. It just had a battery pack and a bunch of flashing red LEDs. But basically, those flashing red LEDs won me the costume contest, the Star Wars segment of the costume contest. Not like the whole grand prize, but I won the like Star Wars first prize. So I still have that trophy in my bedroom at home in Colorado, which is pretty funny. first trophy for costume contest. But I don't really like costume contests. I don't really like the idea of competing, and a lot of times it's just kind of, it's more the acts, the ones that are more of a performance that win, which is good. I mean, they actually perform and do that, but I like more just judging on the quality of the work But even then, I just don't like it to be a competition. I don't get why it needs to be a competition. I just like the cosplay aspect of everyone does what they want, and then we all get together in one room. It's just fun, you know. And that's why we're all here. Ethan Alvarez, when he said his name, he said 17, like MCU Spidey's age, which is pretty coolio. That just reminded me of that MCU Spider-Man movie. So I'm 30. I turned 30 a few months ago. But that movie, one of the girls in it, when they're talking about Spider-Man, she's like, ew, he might be 30, gross. So it's like, thanks. That made me feel good. Thanks, Spider-Man movie. Which it would be gross if like a teenage girl was into a 30-year-old Spider-Man, but still, it's like, well, 30's gross, I guess. Even though it's not. 30's just getting started. Oh, the drama about Guardians of the Galaxy, yeah. Yeah, well, I won't go too much into that, but Disney definitely just acted a little fast, but it's definitely a gray area because he definitely had some weird tweets in his past, but he wasn't tweeting recently, and he was creating cool movies, you know, so it's kind of weird to just tear someone down for their past. And then you also look into the kind of political motivations behind it. Some of the people that led the brigade don't agree with his political views, and so it kind of was kind of looking like just a really political thing. And Disney did it in like under 24 hours. They just fired him like immediately. So bizarre. But you know what? Ultimately, you know what I'm wondering about it, that whole situation, is if, you know, when a director is with a franchise for a long time, sometimes they get really sick of it because it's like their whole life is that franchise for a long time, and they want to go and do like new movies, new things. And so I almost have a feeling that maybe James Gunn wanted that to happen. Like he was kind of just over the comic book movies, and maybe because he was pretty cool about it once he got fired. And I think maybe Disney knew about that, and it's possible that it was just an easy choice at that, with those bits of information. But then everyone else freaks out about it because he really did such an amazing job with those movies. Those are some really unique comic book movies for sure. And every time a comic book movie is unique is great when it has a new feel and like feels like a new kind of movie, because it shows that it's not a comic book movie. It's just a really imaginative. It's not, you know, it's not about that it's a comic book. Comic books just happen to be where, you know, really out there ideas were, you know, that's the only place they could be imagined for so many decades. Now film is caught up, and that's definitely the way it is best done. Oh, Killer Dragon asked, when did I start making Spider-Man stuff? That was back when the Sam Raimi movies came out, because those Spider-Man movies were so cool, and the costume was really cool too with the metal. Like it really just had such a cool like armor costume feel, but it still captured the red and blue, you know, colors and all the textures. So that really was just probably for a lot of us just such a cool, you know, suit that just is like, whoa, I want to have that. And then you start to go through all the intricacies of dye sublimation and urethane webs and or do puff paint and all that kind of stuff. And it's just a really little fun entryway. And so they definitely kept that going. And now, you know, at these days, everything has raised detailing, like screen printing. Like every costume has at least some section that has screen printing on it. So that's definitely not going away anytime soon. I doubt James Gunn would do Ninja Turtles. I doubt it. I mean, I don't know if James Gunn is the type to kind of cash in like that, like Michael Bay, because you know directors like challenges, and if something's kind of been done a bunch of times, it's just kind of like, well, what do I do? What can I bring to it that kind of furthers my career and all that? So I wouldn't be surprised. James Gunn has probably already got a million offers because he's such a talented director. and everyone still supports him. Well, not everyone, but enough people still support him that he's not totally blacklisted. Thanks for tuning in tonight, guys. Again, I've had a pretty consistent turnout the whole time. About 20 viewers concurrently. Yeah. Jordan said he hates how much comic or CGI is in comic book movies, and yeah, I like it's a gift and a curse. I mean, you have to have CGI. It can't all be practical effects. If you look back at like the old Hulk movies or the old Avenger movie or like the old Batman movies, those ones were a lot less CGI and it was a lot of bulky stuff and wiring and rigging, and that stuff all has to be built. It has to have enough time to be built. And then if it's not built or it doesn't work, it can really affect the filming schedule. So CGI is just kind of, there's no other choice. It just makes too much sense. It actually costs more, but it just is too easy to alter things. And Burrito asked, why is Michael Bay directing the Dora the Explorer movie? Well, I think the obvious answer to that is because he was so successful at adapting Transformers, kid property into actual functioning movie story, and he really did. You couldn't directly translate Transformers, the '80s cartoon. He did a good job of turning it into kind of like a sci-fi, real-world thing. So that's what he's going to do with Dora, and all he cares about is the paycheck, and he'll get it because Dora is amazingly popular. That character is insanely popular. And fun fact, I don't know if all of you guys live in America, but not many people know this, but Dora speaks English everywhere else. She speaks Spanish here. Everywhere else she speaks English, because everywhere else in the world they want to learn English and they want their kids to learn English. And so Dora is just how kids around the world learn English. And so she's, there's a reason why they're gonna make something out of that, a movie. And also the original Dora crowd is kind of getting a little older. Yeah, well, Spider Attack. I don't care about Dora the Explorer either. I'm not some kind of big fan of Dora the Explorer. I like that she's teaching English because I think that it's great that the whole world knows English because then I don't have to learn the rest of the world's languages if they're learning mine. Pretty funny. Dwayne Johnson is Swiper. He'd do it if you gave him a big enough check, and then the movie would be a huge blockbuster. Guaranteed. Unless it's a skyscraper movie about a skyscraper burning down. One more minute. Catching up on comments. Oh yeah, I like the PS4 suit, and we haven't really talked about that classic suit either. I think that's what he starts the game off. I don't know if anyone's played it and can confirm that, but that classic suit looks pretty cool. The one that's not quite as like detailed as the regular one, and the lenses don't have two layers, they're just one flat layer. I'm actually working on a pair of those right now. Well, Jordan, I don't know if you're in America or not, or if you are in America. Basically, the best languages would probably be like Spanish, French, or German. But the problem being an American and learning other languages is it's almost a waste of time. Uh-oh, time to vacuform. I have to continue that thought. It's a waste of time to learn other languages. The end. Be back with that. Okay, there we go. Another one vacuformed. Yeah, Jordan. That would be the one I would say. So continuing on my last thought, how I was saying it's not worth learning another language. Spanish is the best one because so many people in America speak Spanish and like as their primary language. You could actually get a job as an interpreter or something like that. So that's the actual most practical one. But the problem is if you learn German or French, what's going to happen is you're going to try and maybe do something with it or go over to Germany or go over to France and you're going to be like, bonjour, and they're gonna be like, no, no, hello. I don't want to speak your broken French. My English is so much better than your French that we're just going to speak English. Like the whole world basically speaks English. So it's really hard for Americans to, or anyone speaking English to decide what language to commit to because everybody else, it's obvious. You just learn English. So Spanish is probably the most worthwhile because of that, just because of the way things are. All right, so this is probably the last one I'm going to do tonight because it's getting pretty late. It's almost 8 o'clock here, and I don't like to run loud vacuums and things like that too late around my neighbors because it's got to be super annoying. Well, that's cool, Burrito. I didn't know you well. I guess if your name's Burrito, I could have maybe assumed, but that maybe not be cool. It's cool that you can speak both languages. I need to open up my streams so that people can actually do the translations, because I could open them up so that people can translate subtitles and it can be spread around the world a little bit more. I just have never done that. And it's hard because I have to really trust whoever's doing it. I don't want them writing weird stuff or anything like that. Yeah, so Spanish is definitely the most practical language of the ones in America to learn. That's why they try to get you into it in most school systems. But it's hard. I'm a very visual, spatial, practical thinker. That's why I'm good at masks and costumes and things like that. So I was never good at language, more intangible subjects like that. That's something that, I know about myself that I just kind of struggle with a little more with stuff like that. And that extends even into organization and time management. And so that's why a lot of times I struggle with like getting things out late. And so it's like my thoughts are all in the practical and in the spatial and intangible and things like, language and time and things like that are a little more difficult for me. Hey, honestly, he said he wished he could make awesome stuff like me. Thanks, I appreciate that compliment. And the key is you just gotta, enjoy it. If you enjoy it, you'll keep working at it, and you'll keep getting better, and that's the key. I've just enjoyed doing this type of stuff for 2 decades at this point. So I have that much experience in what kind of materials and how to tackle certain things. Because that's kind of what ends up happening is when you're learning to make things, you kind of build this like physics engine in your head of how to create certain things, and then you're having to like kind of run simulations through that physics engine in your head of like, okay, so if I'm making this shell out of vacuformed plastic, Is it going to be strong enough? Is that plastic going to be thick enough? And you only learn that stuff by like kind of doing it and making mistakes. But then you start to anticipate like, oh, that glue is definitely not going to be strong enough for that. I definitely need to use a rivet or a bolt. And you know, that's the kind of stuff that you learn and you get a lot better at. I see a couple of you guys taking off. Thanks for watching. To those of you, always enjoy when you guys kind of are in and out. I'll probably be done in a moment here once this one's out. That's about it is. There we go. Up goes the weasel. All right, so that's basically my little get back into things stream here. So it's probably gonna still be another couple of weeks. You know, I won't try to make it too long because I do enjoy doing this. But I have a lot of plans. You know, my background was a little lame for my streams on my wall over there, and so I've got some plans for what I'm gonna do with that. And so it's gonna be fun to come back and it's gonna look way more professional and cool. I've already gotten some lights, and I need to get a microphone and a nicer camera. As you can see, this isn't a good solution. The audio is not great when I move away from the camera. It doesn't want to break. And there we go. Okay. So that's my 4 shells. So that went a little bit better than the last one. Of course, that last one is the one that has millions of YouTube views, probably because of how poorly it went, if I'm being honest. It's a pretty funny video to watch because I forgot to set up the Vacuform table and I struggled with a bunch of the shells. Okay, so I see you guys still have a few more questions. Yeah, I talked a little bit about the Spider-Verse mask, honestly, I think before you got here. And I do plan on tackling that one at some point. And Connor Winter Films asked if I can do how to make fog-free lenses. And I won't, you know, maybe eventually, but to be honest, it's kind of my trade secret, and I really stumbled into something pretty special with it. I've got a little bit of information on it, but I don't go too in depth on how to make the actual molds and stuff. But it's kind of my trade secret, and it's probably like my favorite Spider-Man looking lens ever out of like all the movies and stuff, because it just looks white. It just like glows white, that mesh lens. And so I really love the way that looks on suits. It's just like so consistently white, like Spider-Man, and you can see out of it really well. It doesn't fog up. You can do stunts and stuff. So like that, like man, that mesh works so well. So I feel like I have something special with that. So I'm not too forthcoming with how I make it at this point. Yeah, and I also mentioned earlier in the stream briefly, but there's a question here about if I'm going to go to VidCon. I don't know what that one is, but I do want to go start like traveling around and bringing, you know, some masks and setting up like a table or something, and then maybe like you guys can request ones, and whichever ones get the most requests, I could end up traveling out to those ones, because it'd be fun and it'd be a good way to meet, you know, a lot of interested people and get them, you know, into the stream, because that'd probably be the main focus of it. I'd want to be doing like the stream, maybe even do a stream at whatever conventions I go to, which would be pretty cool. But yeah, so that's kind of like, that's further out in the future for me. You know, you guys know me, I'm definitely pretty slow with this stuff, but you know, hopefully it'll speed up a little bit. You know, I try to kind of get into more of a schedule every time. So yeah, so thanks for watching, guys. I think I'm gonna go ahead and call it at 1 hour and 20 there. Good 1 hour and 20 of making face shells and lenses. I'm sorry if you guys just tuned in, but this will be available to watch in just a little while. And then one more plug, since this is YouTube, uh, plug my merch. You can check out my Etsy shop at etsy.com, and then you can either just search Spider-Man Face Shell or search Made by McLean shop. And yeah, so you can check that stuff out here. That's what I was doing this whole stream. So sorry if you just tuned in, but I've been going for a little over an hour now, and it's hot, and I'm hungry. So thanks for tuning in, and I'll see you guys pretty soon.